Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. I have a story for you that is sure to send shivers down your spine. It's a tale of mystery, vengeance, and the supernatural, set in a quiet rural village in the western countryside. So, settle in, and let's begin. Our story takes place in a small, unassuming village called Greenfield. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and life moves at a slow, steady pace. But sometimes, even the most peaceful places can harbor dark secrets. In the early 1990s, a man named Jack Harper lived in Greenfield with his wife Mary. Jack was a hard-working farmer, and this year had been particularly good for him. He had just sold his harvest at the county market and was returning home with a substantial amount of money. Jack was in high spirits, planning to renovate their old house with his earnings. As Jack and Mary were making their way back home on their horse-drawn cart, something unexpected happened. A small, yellowish creature darted out in front of them, causing Jack to pull the reins hard. The sudden stop sent a jolt through the cart, and they heard a painful squeal. Mary turned around and saw a wounded weasel dragging itself into the nearby bushes. Mary, her heart pounding, turned to Jack. "Jack, do you think we hurt it badly? I've heard that weasels can be vengeful creatures." Jack, not one to believe in superstitions, shrugged it off. "It's just an animal, Mary. Let's get home." That night, as they lay in bed discussing their renovation plans, they drifted off to sleep, unaware of the ominous events about to unfold. The next morning, Mary woke up early to make breakfast. She heard a strange, pained cry from their bedroom and rushed in to find Jack lying on the bed, unable to move his legs. His face was pale and he looked terrified. "Mary, I can't move my legs. They're completely numb," Jack said, his voice trembling. Mary's mind raced back to the incident with the weasel. "Do you think it could be because of what happened yesterday?" she asked. Desperate for help, Mary called for Sam, the village's local seer, known as Blind Sam. Sam was a wise old man with a reputation for dealing with the supernatural. When he arrived, he listened carefully to Mary's recount of the previous day's events. "You've angered a weasel spirit," Sam said gravely. "In these parts, they are known for their fierce desire for revenge. But since you did not harm it intentionally, there might be a way to make amends." Sam instructed Mary to fetch a black dog, as they are believed to have protective powers against the spirits. Mary hurried to her uncle's house and returned with a large black dog. The dog led them to an old, disused water barrel in the backyard and began barking furiously. "The weasel spirit is here," Sam said. Just then, Jack's legs began to regain feeling, and he stumbled out of bed, grabbing a shovel in a fit of rage. "I'll end this once and for all," Jack shouted, storming toward the barrel. "Stop, Jack! Don't anger it further," Sam warned, but Jack, blinded by his temper, swung the shovel down, killing the weasel hidden behind the barrel. Sam's face turned ashen. "Jack, you've made a grave mistake. This won't end well." The next morning, Mary woke up with a sense of dread. She called out to Jack, but there was no answer. Entering their bedroom, she screamed in horror. Jack was hanging from the ceiling, lifeless. The village was shocked and baffled. How could a man like Jack, known for his fiery temper and strong will, take his own life? Sam arrived and quickly deduced the truth. "Check the other rooms," he instructed Mary. In the old barn, they found a small weasel hanging from a beam, mirroring Jack's position exactly. "This is a weasel's curse," Sam explained. "It swapped its life for Jack's. This is their way of exacting revenge." And so, the village of Greenfield was left to ponder the mysterious and terrifying events. The once skeptical Jack had paid the ultimate price for underestimating the power of the weasel spirit. Thank you for joining me for this chilling tale. Remember, sometimes the most ordinary places and events can hold the darkest secrets. Be careful out there. And until next time, stay curious and stay safe. Good evening, dear listeners. Tonight I have a chilling tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. It's a story of strange encounters and eerie phenomena, all experienced firsthand by a man named John Smith. So, get comfortable, maybe grab a blanket to hide under, and let's dive into the mystery of the haunted mountain road. It all began around 2008. John Smith was a truck driver working for a freight company, delivering goods to nearby cities and sometimes even farther. John was known for his warm heart and helpful nature, always willing to lend a hand or go the extra mile. This same spirit extended to his driving. One early morning, John set out with a truck full of goods, aiming to reach his destination by late afternoon. Although he was traveling a route he had never taken before, he trusted his GPS to guide him. As he drove onto a winding mountain road, he felt a sudden drop in temperature, a good 10 degrees cooler than before. The road was treacherous, with sharp bends and steep inclines. Halfway up, John spotted a lone figure trudging along the roadside, burdened with a large backpack. The person looked exhausted, and John's instinct was to help. He slowed down and pulled up next to the young man. "Hey there, heading to Eastville?" John asked. "It's quite a trek from here." The young man, covered in dirt and looking like he had taken a fall, glanced at John but said nothing, continuing his slow march. John, feeling a bit slighted but not wanting to impose, drove off, leaving the strange encounter behind. 3 months later, John found himself on the same mountain road again. Due to a delay at the factory, it was already late by the time he set off. Knowing he'd be driving through the night, he brewed a strong pot of tea to keep himself alert. As darkness fell and the fog thickened, navigating the narrow, twisting road became a harrowing ordeal. Hours passed, and John realized with growing dread that he seemed to be driving in circles, the same landmarks appearing again and again. He felt trapped, as if the mountain itself was playing tricks on him. Cold sweat trickled down his back as he wondered if he had stumbled into a supernatural trap. Suddenly, through the mist, he saw a figure by the roadside. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized the young man with the backpack. Desperate for a break in the eerie monotony, John slowed down and called out again. To his surprise, the young man turned and waved. John hesitated but decided to stop. The young man approached, his face pale but otherwise calm. He spoke in a soft, almost soothing voice. "Mind if I join you?" John, feeling uneasy but preferring company to solitude in this nightmare, agreed. The truck started rolling again, the silence inside heavy and unsettling. To break it, John asked, "So, what brings you out here so late?" The young man replied, "I enjoy camping. The mountains are peaceful at night." John nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Trying to lighten the mood, John mentioned their previous encounter. "You know, I saw you here a few months back. Do you come here often?" The young man's expression darkened. "I can't seem to leave this place," he said with a sigh. John's unease grew. He glanced over and noticed bruises forming on the young man's face. Bruises that hadn't been there moments before. The young man caught John's gaze and, in a harsh tone, said, "Just drive. Don't look at me." John's heart raced, and he kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead, silence engulfing them once more. As they approached a particularly sharp bend, the young man suddenly spoke. "Turn off here. Just drive through the barrier. Trust me, it's the way out." John was terrified. He slowed the truck and looked ahead. Beyond the barrier was a sheer drop into darkness. "You're crazy. I'll crash," John protested. The young man calmly replied, "If you don't believe me, get out and see for yourself." Trembling, John stepped out of the truck. As he walked closer to the barrier, his surroundings began to change. The fog lifted slightly, revealing a hidden path leading safely down the mountain. John turned to thank the young man, but he was already walking away, back into the fog. The memory of his words, "I can't seem to leave this place," echoed in John's mind, sending chills down his spine. John Smith never forgot that night. He doesn't talk much about it, but when he does, there's always a shadow of fear in his eyes. Who was that young man? A lost soul, forever bound to the haunted mountain road? The mysteries of that night remain unsolved, leaving us to wonder what other secrets the mountains hold. Thank you for joining me tonight for this spine-tingling tale. Remember, sometimes the most ordinary roads can lead to the most extraordinary and terrifying encounters. Stay safe out there, and perhaps think twice before offering a ride to a stranger on a dark, foggy night. Good night and sweet dreams. Hello, everyone, and welcome! I'm thrilled to share with you a spine-chilling tale that will send shivers down your spine and keep you on the edge of your seat. So, grab a blanket, turn down the lights, and let's dive into this eerie adventure together. Our story takes place on the desolate stretch of road known as Route 317, a remote and daunting journey that winds through treacherous mountains and endless deserts. It's a path beloved by adventurous travelers, but for a seasoned truck driver named John, it's a route filled with dread and isolation. John had been driving this road for 14 long years. The initial mystery and allure had long faded, replaced by a monotonous routine. Stories of supernatural encounters were common among his fellow truckers, but John had never experienced anything out of the ordinary. He always dismissed such tales as mere fabrications. Hanging in his truck was a talisman given to him by an old Tibetan monk, a gesture of politeness more than belief. It had been there for years, forgotten in the daily grind. But on this particular day, as John started his journey, the talisman unexpectedly broke. It had hung there for years, its presence barely noticed. John glanced at it, puzzled. The string seemed frayed and worn out, so he tossed it into the cluttered glove box, not giving it a second thought. As John ventured deeper into the vast desert, a sense of unease began to creep over him. The usual tranquility was replaced by an inexplicable anxiety. After hours of driving, he spotted something unusual: a lone backpacker walking along the desolate road. It was incredibly odd, as anyone with common sense knew that traversing this area on foot was both dangerous and foolhardy. John honked his horn, intending to offer help, or at least warn the backpacker to be cautious. But the figure showed no reaction, continuing to walk steadily forward. As John passed, he checked his rearview mirror, expecting to see the hiker acknowledge him. To his astonishment, the figure had vanished. He shrugged it off, thinking it must have been a trick of the light. But a few miles later, there it was again, the same backpacker, identical in every way. This couldn't be a coincidence. Perhaps it was a group, all dressed alike, but something felt off. A sense of foreboding grew stronger with each passing moment. Determined to outpace this unsettling presence, John pressed down on the accelerator. Yet, the backpacker appeared once more, this time right in front of his truck, moving at an impossible pace, keeping up with the vehicle. Panic surged through John as the figure slowly turned to face him. The sight was horrifying. A decayed, eyeless face, grinning grotesquely at him. John's heart raced as the figure leapt toward his truck, clinging to the windshield, its ghastly face mere inches away. He could barely breathe, paralyzed by fear, as ghostly apparitions began to surround his truck, clawing and scraping at the windows. The desert seemed alive with restless spirits, a never-ending sea of tormented souls. In his desperation, John remembered the talisman. He fumbled through the glove box, hands trembling, and clutched it tightly. With his eyes squeezed shut, he raised the talisman high, hoping for some kind of salvation. To his surprise, when he dared to look again, the apparitions had vanished. The ghastly figure was gone, and he found himself alone on the desolate desert road. Relieved but shaken, John drove on, not stopping until the first light of dawn. As the sun began to rise, he finally saw the familiar stretch of Route 317, guiding him back to civilization. From that day forward, the talisman hung once again in his truck, a silent guardian against the unknown. John's life resumed its routine, but something deep inside him had changed forever. And so, our tale comes to an end. The desolate road, the eerie encounters, and the mysterious talisman have left an indelible mark on John's soul. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. Remember, the world is full of mysteries, And sometimes it's the unseen forces that shape our lives the most. Stay safe, and until next time, sweet dreams. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today I have a truly chilling story to share with you. This tale, set in a small rural village in the 1990s, is about strange encounters, eerie events, and the haunting consequences of witnessing one's own soul. It all began when I was just a young boy, about 10 years old. My two closest friends, John and Sam, and I would often pass by a small pond on our way home from school. This pond was our playground, where we'd catch fish and frogs and skip stones across the water. The pond was shallow, and our parents never worried about us playing there. One day after school, we headed to the pond as usual, but shortly after we arrived, it started to rain heavily. We quickly ran back home, drenched, but laughing. The rain continued to pour all night long, and it wasn't until morning that it finally stopped. The next day, John woke up early, needing to use the outhouse. As he approached the door, he saw it was already open. To his shock, a boy who looked exactly like him walked out. John was stunned. The boy, a mirror image of himself, walked past him and into his house. Confused and shaken, John finished his business and searched every room, but the doppelganger was nowhere to be found. At breakfast, he told his parents about the strange encounter. His mother dismissed it, saying he must have been half asleep. She warned him to stay away from the pond that day, as the heavy rain would have raised the water level. John promised he wouldn't go, but he couldn't shake the eerie feeling. On our way to school, John told Sam and me about what he saw. I tried to rationalize it, suggesting he might have seen his reflection. But John insisted it was a real boy, an exact replica of himself. Sam, ever the joker, mentioned his grandmother's old superstition. Seeing your own soul means death is near. I scolded him for being so morbid. Throughout the day, I kept an eye on John. Apart from being a bit tired and yawning a lot, he seemed fine. After school, we debated where to go. As we walked, we saw a woman from the village carrying her child. The child, upon seeing John, burst into tears, terrified. We were baffled and a bit unnerved. Sam, trying to lighten the mood, joked that John was so ugly he scared the kid. We laughed it off and continued walking, but then something even stranger happened. A stray dog, normally timid and avoiding people, suddenly became aggressive, baring its teeth and growling at us. We cautiously edged past it and then sprinted away. It felt like the dog was targeting John specifically. When we reached the pond, it was unrecognizable. The rain had transformed it into a much larger and deeper body of water, filled with debris. I didn't want to stay, but John spotted a large plank of wood floating in the water and suggested we use it as a raft. Reluctantly, Sam and I agreed. John was the first to jump onto the plank, followed by Sam. I hesitated, but John urged me to join them. Just as I was about to step on, the plank flipped over, throwing both of them into the water. I screamed their names as I saw Sam resurface and cling to the plank. I helped him to the shore, but John was nowhere to be seen. Panicking, we ran back to the village for help. Soon villagers arrived with boats and started searching the pond. They found the plank and discovered it was a piece of an old coffin. Despite hours of searching, John was still missing. His father decided to drain the pond to find him. They worked all night with several pumps, draining the water until the next morning. When the pond was nearly empty, they found something horrifying. A coffin at the bottom, and inside, John's lifeless body. Clutched in his arms was a skeletal corpse, holding on to him tightly. No one could explain how John ended up in the coffin, or why the skeleton was embracing him. The pond was later filled in, and the incident became a haunting memory in our village. Years later, I learned about an old belief that seeing one's own soul is an omen of death. If only I had known, perhaps I could have prevented that tragic day. Thank you for listening. Remember, some things in life are beyond our understanding, and sometimes it's better to heed the warnings and stay safe. Take care and stay cautious out there. Hello, dear friends. Gather around and let me take you on a journey into the eerie unknown. This is a tale of mystery and dread, where the veil between our world and the next becomes perilously thin. Tonight, I will tell you the story of Emily, a college student who discovered the dark side of a simple nighttime routine. Brace yourselves, for this story is not for the faint-hearted. Emily was a sophomore at a university in a small, picturesque town in the western countryside. She had beautiful, long hair, which she cherished and took great care of. Her friends often admired her luscious locks, and the boys would steal glances as she walked by. Little did she know that this pride in her hair would lead her into a nightmarish encounter. One evening, while her roommates were out attending a campus event, Emily decided to wash her hair before bed. Alone in the quiet dormitory, she stood in front of the mirror, wetting her hair. Suddenly, she heard a peculiar, unsettling laugh. It was faint, as if it were coming from beyond the walls. Emily paused, her heart skipping a beat, but she shrugged it off, attributing it to her imagination, and continued washing. As she leaned over the sink again, the laughter returned, this time sharper and more distinct. It sent chills down her spine. She quickly dried her hair and turned to leave, but not before noticing something strange in the mirror. Her reflection did not mimic her movements. Instead, it stood eerily still, hair covering its face. Emily's pulse quickened as she realized this wasn't her reflection at all. The figure in the mirror had long, dark hair that obscured its face and wore a tattered, blood-stained dress. Red, festering sores covered its arms, and from one hand, a thick, dark fluid dripped. Emily's mind screamed for her to flee, but her body was frozen in terror. The figure's head slowly lifted, revealing a grotesque, decaying face, and it began to reach out from the mirror. Emily bolted from the bathroom, her feet slipping on the wet tiles. She crashed to the floor, her head hitting the ground hard, and everything went black. When she awoke, her roommates had returned and were gathered around her, concerned. Emily, dazed and frightened, told them she had slipped. But deep down, she knew the truth. Something otherworldly had made contact. From that night on, Emily was plagued by nightmares. Each night, the same decayed woman would appear, grabbing her hair and pulling with inhuman strength. The pain felt real, and Emily would wake up sweating and terrified. Her once beautiful hair began to lose its shine, turning brittle and dull. Streaks of gray appeared, and she knew the spirit had left its mark. Worried and exhausted, Emily confided in her mother during a phone call. Her mother listened intently and suggested she visit her grandmother, who lived in a nearby village and was known for her knowledge of ancient traditions and remedies. Emily took a leave of absence from school and traveled to her grandmother's home. As soon as she arrived, her grandmother sensed something was wrong. She embraced Emily and assured her they would drive the spirit away. That evening, her grandmother prepared a ritual. Emily noticed a strong scent of iron and something earthy mixed with the fragrance of herbs. Her grandmother explained that she was making a potion from dog's blood, glutinous rice, known for their protective properties against evil spirits. At midnight, the hour of greatest danger, her grandmother set up an old wooden washstand in the center of the room. On it was an oval mirror and a basin filled with steaming hot water. Emily was instructed to wash her hair in the basin, no matter what happened, and to avoid looking into the mirror. Emily followed her grandmother's instructions. As she began to wash, she felt the air grow cold and heard the same dreadful laughter. The mirror trembled on the washstand, and she knew the spirit was near. She kept her eyes tightly shut, focusing on the task at hand. Suddenly, a skeletal hand grabbed her hair. Yanking her head back with brutal force, Emily cried out, but her grandmother was ready. She grabbed a bowl filled with the prepared potion and flung it over the hand. The stench of blood and rice filled the room, and the hand recoiled, a shriek of agony echoing through the air. Emily's grandmother didn't stop there. She grabbed another larger bowl and hurled its contents at the mirror. A blinding light burst forth, and the mirror shattered into pieces. The shrieks turned into a wail, and Then there was silence. The evil presence was gone. Her grandmother reassured Emily that the spirit was banished and that she was safe now. Emily's mother helped dry her hair and they cut off the damaged ends. From that day forward, Emily kept her hair short, a constant reminder of her terrifying ordeal. And so, dear friends, the next time you find yourself alone at night, remember Emily's story. The simplest actions can sometimes open doors to the unknown. Thank you for joining me tonight. Keep your lights on and your hair dry after dark. Until next time, stay safe and be vigilant.